Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I request everyone to settle down, please. We will begin our technical session 5. The theme of this session is BIMSTEC nations, cultural exchanges and civilizational linkages. May I please welcome on stage Dr. Sarup Prasad Ghosh, Director, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, Kolkata; Mr. Bidhayok Dash, Writer, Scholar, Development Communication, and Founding Editor and Managing Director, The Borderlands; Dr. Jirayut Sintupan, Director, Center for South Asian Studies, Chulalongkorn University, Thailand; Dr. Lobsang Doji, Senior Lecturer, Nobuling Writer College, Royal University of Bhutan; and Dr. Rupendra Kumar Chattopadhyay, Azad Fellow, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies. Requesting the speakers to please be on stage. We will begin the session in a minute, waiting for the chair to come. I request an ISCS official to felicitate our chair. May we have a big round of applause. Requesting Dr. Ghosh to felicitate the speakers, please. We begin the session, BIMSTEC Nations, Cultural Exchanges and Civilizational Linkages, requesting Dr. Ghosh to chair the session.
Namaskar to each and all of you. My regards goes to the Ministry of External Affairs and to the Ministry of Culture for extending their cooperation. And respect and regards to Mr. Mukherjee and his team of ISCS. We have been in partner with ISCS in the course of organizing this seminar. Culture was identified and proposed as an area of cooperation among the BIMSTEC nations from the very beginning of its journey. Swami Vivekananda thundered the universal oneness of humanity irrespective of its innate diversity, recognizing that the pluralistic nature of societies shared cultural heritage, and the rich diversity of languages, arts, crafts, and traditions provide ample opportunity for multidimensional cooperation within Bay of Bengal region. The first BIMSTEC Culture Ministers meeting held in Bhutan on 23rd to 25th May 2006 adopted the Paro initiative that called for the establishment of the BIMSTEC Cultural Industries Commission and the BIMSTEC Cultural Industries Observatory to the located region in Bhutan. Accordingly, the member states signed the MOU on the establishment of the BIMSTEC Cultural Industries Commission and the BIMSTEC Cultural Industries Observatory in the third BIMSTEC Summit held in Myanmar in 2014. The leaders of the fourth BIMSTEC Summit emphasized the need to enhance cultural exchange among the member states to further strengthen the historic cultural ties among peoples, promote mutual respect and tolerance for cultural diversity, underscore the importance of Buddhism as a connecting thread in the region, and remain committed to giving a clear manifestation to this by establishing a Buddhist circuit. They agreed to hold meetings of BIMSTEC cultural ministers and BIMSTEC cultural festival at regular intervals, as decided during the 17th BIMSTEC ministerial meeting. The establishment of an expert group on cultural cooperation is in the process of being initiated to examine the scope to deliberate upon all issues to promote cultural values, heritages, diversity, and exchange in the region, including developing plan of cooperation and action in culture. ISKCON, Ramakrishna Mission, Sri Aravinda Ashram are doing an excellent job in the field of cultural connectivity. Research on Indian knowledge system from the high heights of the Vedanta philosophy in the course of heritage studies through the days of the great Buddha and the preachings of Buddhism, and down to the era of Guru Nanak Ji and the tenets of Sikhism. Each and all has a place in this region's diverse religio-cultural traditions. The concept of non-violence, as split in Vaishnavism, in Hinduism, Buddhism, do play an important role here. And we have learned it from our great father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, how to execute non-violence in the field of politics. In course of this execution, India's northeast has often been described as the region where South Asia and Southeast Asia meet. Indeed, sharing much of its border with neighboring countries, the northeastern states are economically and culturally integrated with Southeast Asia. This brief examines the role of India's Northeast in strengthening the country's relations with its partners in the Bay of Bengal Initiative for multi-sectoral and economic cooperation. It makes the case for treating the Northeast states as a starting point of India's BIMSTEC engagement, and in particular through efforts that will nourish cultural connectivity. In the 21st century, many analysts and scholars have devoted their time to studying the subject of regional and sub-regional integration. After all, the waves of regional and sub-regional cooperation have swept across the globe and are deserving proper scrutiny. However, there remains a paucity of research on Bay of Bengal Initiative for multi-sectoral, technical and economic cooperation established in the year of 1997 to secure rapid economic development and accelerate economic growth and social progresses of the sub-region. More than 2 decades since the group's inception, stakeholders are facing the challenge of reinforcing BIMSTEC strengths while addressing its weaknesses so that it can fulfill its mission more effectively. For India, BIMSTEC has a significant role to play in its renewed look east to act east policy, even as it also emphasizes the centrality of the Asian in its relations with the countries of Southeast Asia. BIMSTEC received much needed support from Prime Minister Narendra Bhai Modi in his address during the 20th anniversary of BIMSTEC, where he described the sub-regional grouping as a natural platform for fulfilling India's key foreign policy priorities of neighborhood first and act east. The group also got a new momentum in the October 2016 when India hosted the BIMSTEC members at Goa. BIMSTEC growth is viewed as a pragmatic step, merely a demonstration of its potential to play the role of a regional leader, which is an aspiration that had been instrumental in its decision to revitalize its look east policy to act east policy. BIMSTEC's 7 countries around the Bay of Bengal are home to around 22% of the world's population. These countries recorded a combined GDP of US $2.7 trillion in 2016 and have sustained average annual growth rates of growth between 3.4 to 7.5% from 2012 to 2016. 1/4 of the world's traded goods across the Bay every year. Since the time of its birth, BIMSTEC has been viewed as having tremendous potential to promote the progress of cooperation, development, and peace in Asia. It can play a key role in nurturing regional common prosperity, connecting the people across the South Asia and Southeast Asian regions, and exploring the centuries-old economic and cultural linkages for economic and other benefits for the people of this region. In the progress, the landlocked region could open up the transformation of BIMSTEC into an important vehicle for promoting regional cultural cooperation and economic integration in a range of areas. With this introductory note, because I have seen that the session is for 1.5 hours, so nearly 15 minutes goes for each speaker. It started 5 minutes late, and I took just 15 minutes. And I will request all my panelists today to follow this so that we can end the session in time, because we have the valedictory session after this. With these words, I will request each and all of you to cooperate with us so that we can end this session, the last technical session, in time. Thank you. Our first speaker today is Mr. Vidhayak Das, writer, scholar, development communication, and founding editor and managing director, The Borderlands. Mr. Das is a scholar on international affairs, governance, and human rights, presently heading a think tank, Social Actions for New Alternatives, India-based out of Guwahati. He is also the founding editor of a recently launched digital storytelling platform called The Borderlands, which focuses on history, culture, people, livelihood, geopolitics, etc., along the eastern borders of India. He has previously worked as a journalist in India with leading news media publications before moving on to development communications and election observation related work in South and Southeast Asia. He spent considerable time in Myanmar as country representative of international election and governance think tanks. His geographical area of expertise spans across Asia Pacific and Central Asia. In recognition of his work on democracy building, the South Korean government has made him the International Goodwill Ambassador on Democracy for 21 to 23. With these words, I welcome Mr. Das to the dais. Thank you.
Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The chair, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. The organizers for putting together this very important event. At the outset, let me tell you, I am not an expert on culture, neither civilizational history. I am a writer, a storyteller, more of a travel writer, who picks up essence from the ground, and I therefore try to look at things as they are on the ground and how they evolve and how I sort of understand what is culture, what is cultural exchange, and in that, the civilizational ties that has moved on from generations on generations. I shall therefore confine my talk to my own understanding of cultural exchanges and civilizational ties, a lot of it anecdotal, some of it based on my studies and interactions with people across South and Southeast Asia, having spent the last 15, 16 years combined in Myanmar and Thailand, and having traveled across Southeast Asia quite a bit. Let me start my presentation with this quote from the French-born American cellist Yo-Yo Ma, who says, when you learn something from people or from a culture, you accept it as a gift. And it is your lifelong commitment to preserve it and build on it. I have chosen this quote as, for me, it sums up the very ethos of our existence as a community across the Asia and the Pacific, and not just the nations that make up the BIMSTEC. And my presentation essentially is going to be focused on this quote, which I think essentially describes what our cultural exchanges and how do we preserve our cultures, and how, most importantly, how do we take it forward. I think I would also like to mention that today we are here discussing cultural exchanges, civilizational ties, and in the morning in the sessions, I think yesterday we discussed educational networks, connections across BIMSTEC, Asia. And why this is happening is because I think we must accept the fact of the kind of prominence that our countries in Asia has risen of late, especially India. And I think our Prime Minister and the present government, I think very dutifully, they've been spending a lot of time and effort to be able to really connect us back to some of our cultures, which we have not lost, but probably we have forgotten, and we're trying to therefore reconnect to cultures that are very important to you, me, and just about everybody in the region. Now, just to give you an example, a sense of what my presentation is going to focus on are essentially observations, my own observations, as I've said, on cultural ambassadors, or we call them cultural icons, who have been literal vehicles of cultural exchanges across civilizations, have taken the values of our cultures and exchanged our art, our architecture, our music, and our literature. Some of the similarities, variations, preservation, institution building, and expansion of our Indic traditions, or if you'd like to call it Hinduism, Buddhism, in indigenous forms across different countries. And if I have the time, to look at a bit of the Northeast where I come from. You know, when we talk about cultural ambassadors and cultural icons, there's one cultural icon who in our history, from the time we've actually known our history, we've known that this person has connected us through civilizations. And the person that I'm talking about is Ram. I'm sure you know Ram. Most of you know Ram. Ram, I'm sure there are some Rams in the room or outside the room. You go around, you find Rams. There are lots of Rams. But on a more serious note, in our context, we are inspired by Ram. We worship Ram, we follow Ram, and we even debate Ram. I keep telling my friends, my colleagues, my friends who are working with me, juniors, that let us not forget to debate Ram, because the minute we start debating Ram, we start to learn about a culture that has withstood the challenges of times. And we are still here today discussing the evolution of this beautiful culture, which is spread across Asia, Southeast Asia in particular, and which is celebrated in those countries. And this is what I'm actually going to focus a little bit as I go forward. So, during my stay in some of these countries in Southeast Asia, what I found is that Ram is part of people's daily lives. And the Ramayana happens to be the most well-read book in most of the countries that I have visited. This is the Ramayana ballet. I'm sure most of you would have seen this ballet in either Indonesia or in Thailand and in Myanmar, known in different names. In Thailand, it's known as the Ramakien, in Indonesia as the Kauk in Ramayana, and in Myanmar, it is known as the Yamazado. And this kind of ballet, or the kind of music, or the kind of architecture that is associated with Ramayana or the Mahabharata reflects not just the Vedic tradition, but the importance of our cultural icons like Ram. And this is just not merely entertainment. This is just not music. This is just not a touristy thing for the people of those countries. If you look at Thailand, if you're talking about Indonesia, for them, it's about values, it's about learnings, it's about something that connects them to their daily lives. Ram for them epitomizes values, learning. Ram epitomizes universal values, and it's connected to their social and political life. So I think it is important for us to understand, going back to the quote that I started from, that culture, as in how we have imbibed the culture, how do we make it a lifelong commitment to preserve that culture and to be able to take it forward through generations. This is, I think, what some of these countries have done with cultures that were probably not their own, cultures that came to them from what was Bharat, India, and how it has survived through ages. I think I would not be wrong to say that Ramayana is today at the heart of the natives' traditional culture in many of these countries that I've just mentioned. It is an integral part of the folk song and dance of every community, so much so that it has been recognized as indigenous by them. The Ramayana is also understood and read in other forms. For example, in Myanmar, there is also another version of the Ramayana called the Thiriram. This is slightly different from the Yama Jaddo. And here you find scriptures that have been found in different places. For instance, in this pagoda in Sagain, which is very close to Manipur, which actually borders the entire Manipur and a bit of Nagaland, where they found scriptures which talk about this form of Ramayana. And this Ramayana, the Thiriram, has very close resemblance, the stylic resemblance to the Siamese Nang shadow play, the puppetry. So you see, what I'm trying to say here is there are these similarities across these cultures, but these similarities have all been taken from one culture and another culture has built on it. And this is exactly what has been happening, I think, around in these different countries where they have actually connected cultures that have come to them and blended it with their local customs, their traditions, and over the years they've made it an important part of their life. They enjoy it. It's something that they have been using in their daily lives, like I've mentioned before, in their political and in their social lives. I'll just go to the next slide because this could take a little time, so I just don't want to spend too much time. But there are also, I want to say, there are other versions of the Ramayana, the Vedic tradition, the Vedanta, the Yoga, Buddhism, etc., in countries like Thailand, in Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Indonesia, all over. This particular example is from Myanmar. This is again also in Sagain, close to Monia. It's called Pointon. This is a complex of cave temples containing ancient Buddhist images and murals. Now, these murals and paintings are very different from the kind of paintings or murals that you get to see in the other form of Ramayana, be it the Thiriram or the Yama Jaddo in Myanmar. These murals are very Burmese in nature. They don't have any Indian influence as such. They have elements of, they're foreign elements which reflect the political and the cultural relation of the time, but they are not essentially taken from, let's say, the Indic tradition. These are things that have come up on their own. And I think this really explains the essence of preserving our cultures and preserving it in a way that is also our own, and also understanding cultures that come from the outside and building on that culture, and again going back to make it a lifelong commitment. There's another ambassador, cultural ambassador that I'd like to talk about, and this is Guru Padmasambhava, or the Guru Rinpoche. I'm sure my friends from Bhutan would like to talk during a Q&A more about the Guru Rinpoche and the Padmasambhava. We at the Borderlands have just started to document the trails of Guru Padmasambhava along the Himalayas, starting from Tibet to Bhutan to Sikkim to Arunachal Pradesh. All along the Himalayas, Guru Padmasambhava has taken civilization with him. And the stories of the Guru Padmasambhava is extremely interesting, for it connects us with the civilization across the Himalayas, and it tells us about the civilizational linkages that Trans-Himalayan Buddhism has brought to us and how important it is for us in today's day and time. Sir, please let me know 1 minute before my time ends so that I could just... All right. The pictures that you see here are, one on the extreme left is of the Guru Padma Sambhava in a place called Menchuka in Arunachal Pradesh. I was there recently, where he started from Tibet, the Ning Mapa school of Tibetan Buddhism. And that has been spreading across this region, and it's got beautiful traits and interesting features, which actually are things that I think we as a community need to learn, our youths need to learn, and I think there is a great scope for study of this particular kind of cultural exchanges that have taken place along the Himalayas. On the right, the Guru Padma Sambhava in Sikkim, and next to that in Bhutan, there's a place called the Bird's Nest. Just below that, some friends who had been there recently had taken this picture. As we are trying to do a process of documentation, we are also carrying out some recce to understand what are these places and how are we going to go and do our documentation. On the bottom is Geling, which is in a place called Tuting in Arunachal Pradesh, 20 kilometers from the line of actual control, the border with China. And these are places, these are extremely important because Trans-Himalayan Buddhism is something that connects the people to not only their culture, but also it is about connecting with the mainstream. Because these are people that live in the Himalayas and they are not necessarily connected to the mainstream, which probably is where we are from. And it is important for us to look at how they have lived their lives, the kind of livelihoods that they have, or the kind of spread of the religion and the culture that is so important to them and which is also connected to us. There is another cultural ambassador in Guru Nanak who's traveled the same length and breadth of the Himalayas, and he is another cultural ambassador, I think, where there's a great scope for studying the kind of civilization that has taken place along the way wherever the Guru has traveled across the Himalayas, right up to Bhutan and beyond. These are some of the institutes that I have of late been to and seen how they are actually promoting Trans-Himalayan Buddhism and the civilizational connect. This is the Central Institute of Himalayan Studies in Tenga Valley in Arunachal Pradesh. There's the Center for Himalayan Studies in Delhi University, which is much older. The Tenga Valley one has just started, and it is taking in people from different parts of the region, northeastern region and outside. And you have the Himalayan National Mission on Himalayan Studies, which is again also pretty old. It's been there for some time. You have the Namgyal Institute of Tibetology in Gangtok. You have the Sikkim Research Institute of Tibetology. These are institutes that are doing great work, and I think there's huge scope again to be able to connect with this institute. And BIMSTEC, I think, is a great forum. And in the morning, I heard that there are proposals to open up institutes which can actually bring countries that are in the BIMSTEC, people, students that are interested in really understanding the different kinds of cultures and the civilizational linkages. I don't really have much time, but I think I will do disservice if I do not talk about the Northeast where I come from. And you see the Northeast in itself, there's so much diversity in the Northeast, and the Northeast till today, I think, is not really connected to the mainstream, and there are various reasons for that. And the Northeast connection, we've heard the chair say that the Northeast is a place where South Asia meets Southeast Asia, or India meets Southeast Asia, and a lot of the people in the Northeast, the indigenous people of the Northeast, the Nagas, you have the Meiteis who are known as the Kathe in Manipur, you have the Kukis, you have the Mars, you have the Zomi people, the Chins. They are all listed in the 135 tribes of Myanmar. And they have a huge civilizational and cultural linkage with not just Myanmar, but across Southeast Asia. So I think when we talk about cultural linkages and civilizational linkages, we must remember that the Northeast, which now sort of is getting mainstream through the Act East Asia policy. For some time now, the policy has been there. It is important for us to revisit Northeast, to understand the people of the Northeast, to understand the cultures in the Northeast, to understand the diversities of the Northeast, and how Northeast is so closely connected to the rest of Asia. A lot of Northeast would probably not represent the Indic tradition, Hinduism, Buddhism, at least in a great part of the Northeast. But the connect that the Northeast has with the rest of Southeast Asia is equally important. And this is something I think is an area that needs to be discussed, that needs to be talked about, that needs to be researched. And people like us who do our storytelling through our platforms are trying our best to be able to bring out stories from the Northeast to the mainstream, to the larger audience, to be able to connect with this region and to be able to take it forward and to understand, coming back again to that quote, on how can we therefore commit ourselves to preserving our own cultures and taking it forward as we have done through the generations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Das, for your learned deliberation. You have touched the different versions of Ramayana which are popular in different parts of Southeast Asia. I can add up to your concern for Northeast that the present government under Narendra Bhai Modi is giving due regard and sincere concentration on the development of Northeast. You have touched how we will try to realize the infinite within the finite. You have also touched how Ramayana teaches us to discover the real man and move away from the apparent man. Rama, Krishna, and Buddha falls under the same Vaishnava tradition. According to our Hindu belief, Ram, Krishna, Buddha are incarnations of Vishnu. So this cultural links with Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism, the religions born in this region, had been deep and close. Once, the major part of Asia was influenced by Buddhism. And today, South Asia, Southeast Asia, Far East Asia cannot be taught without discussing on Buddhism. With these words, I thank you, Mr. Das, for your deliberation. Now I invite Dr. Rayud Sinthupan, Director of Center for South Asian Studies, Chula Langkarn University, Thailand. Dr. Rayud is the Director of South Asia Research Center and a lecturer in communication arts at the university. He received his BA in communication arts from the same university and eventually a PhD in drama and performance practice from the University of Exeter. His research interests include creative communications, media practice, communications, and transculturalism, media adaptation and translation, South Asian studies, as well as perpetrator. He is an editor of Mapping Migration, Culture and Identity in the Indian Diasporas in Southeast Asia and the UK, published by Cambridge Scholars Publishing. He is currently leading a research consortium on social innovation for sustainable and livable Asian cities in his university, and on extremism in South and Southeast Asia. He has also taken part in media literacy for social change project for the International Program for the Development Communication of UNESCO. I, with my regards, request Dr. Rayuji to start his deliberation. Your time starts now.
Okay, namaskar and good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you, the chair of these sessions, for introducing me, and also I would like, to thank the organizers of this event, these beautiful events that we have, listened to, all good thoughts from good speakers, since yesterday. But as usual, the sessions about the cultural linkage and civilizations always put at the last sessions, while it is the most important issues in any international or regional cooperations. Yesterday, Dr. Cristiano Xavier has spoken about the possibility of the train links between Kolkata, Dhaka, Yangon, and Bangkok, which is a very, very good idea. It has always been my dreams, but my questions would be, how much do we prepare to face our historical baggage and also our colonial past? Because one cannot, well, as a Thai person, I cannot deny that I cannot deny our involvement with the Japanese during the Second World War. The same thing happens in Myanmar. But at the same time, if we want to move forward, we need to reconcile with our past and also our cultural baggage. So my perspectives today, I'm not going to looking at the grandeur of cultural or civilizations, but I'm going to look at something pretty mundane and pretty close to our life, which is food. From my perspective, the study of food in terms of food studies or food history has been under researched in general. And the terms I terms today is what I term is gastro-diplomacy and the remapping of the Bay of Bengal. My good friend, Dr. Sunil Amarit from Yale University has written a very good book called Crossing the Bay of Bengal, and it's about the history of transmigrations across the Bay of Bengal. And in his book, he has pointed out a very important point, that if BIMSTEC is going to work, we will have to stop thinking about it as a linkage between ASEAN or South Asia or the meeting point between the Indo-Pacific. But we have to think about it as a region in itself, with its own history and with its own geography. So let me begin with the term gastro-diplomacy. Gastro-diplomacy can be termed as something quite simple: food as communications, food as a means to understand other people, different cultures, and create a platform for interactions between people and between culture. The first concept of gastro-diplomacy is food as the experience of the arteners. If we think of the Holy Communion in Christianity, we eating bread as the flesh of Christ, and we drinking wine as we drinking the blood of Jesus Christ. It is the same thing when we are taking food inside our body, and we are taking in different cultures. We are taking in a different way of thinking into ourselves. We learn about what is allowed and what is forbidden, what is considered to be a prized delicacy, and what is considered to be a mundane daily food for daily consumptions. And we also learn about the similarities between the food we are eating on a daily basis and the food from other cultures. We learn about the structures of the meal, and how everything in the environment being put together in just one meal. In terms of food studies and in terms of diplomacy, food also changed public perceptions, because once we are taking the food inside of our body, we tasting a different food, we have been transported into a different sphere. We understand people, we understand the world through a different lenses. There has been studies that gastrodiplomacy or food diplomacies can change the perceptions of how people around the world perceive one culture. For instance, Korea or Thailand, when people think of Thailand or Korea, they're thinking of food. And because through food, people seeing us in a very positive lens. And also, food, one is taking food. Food can also create a sense of connectedness. I think you are here. You will all know this plant, the tal palms. It's also the tal in Thai language. It's a jaggery palm that produces jaggery sugar, and also it's a basis for food across the Bay of Bengal. In Bengal here, you have tal pita, and in Thailand, we also have the same desserts, similar way of cooking and similar taste. So as you can see, that we are connected through food, and jaggery palm also is a basis for our daily life. We use the leaves for many things, and we use the sap to produce jaggery. And when last night conversations during the meal, we were talking about our meal cannot be without chilies. Chilies also connect us together, and chilies also connect us with a wider world context. Because before the arrival of the Portuguese or the Spaniards, we had no chilies. But because of these migrations across the oceans, we have created a culture of our own, and we grown accustomed to it, and also we also share basis of food, whether it's moringa, whether it's lady's fingers or coconut. All of these things connect us together. But when I show you the photos of these plants, it's also reminded me of what I have been trained to do. I was trained as a biologist at the first. So my main concern was taxonomy. We try to distinguish the plants, and we try to trace the origins of the plants. And then, it just occurred to me that, the way in which, scientists or ourselves, thinking at that way, we're trying to establish, the origins of things. It is actually, a colonial heritage, because, it is originated, in the, Abrahamic, religions, which, believe that, there is only, one source of origins. But while in fact, all the cultures or all the living being in the world, we living in this transmigration flux, beyond the border of nationalisms. We are living in the world of, transnationalisms. So food, has no boundary. Now, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there has always been a conflict between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and also the Southern Caucasus countries. Yeah, but in order to solve that problems, the members of the country in that region comes together and organize a festival of dolma, which is a dish of a grape leaves wrapped inside with rice and meat, which is a common dishes around the regions, and they create a platform and a dialogue between the people living in that areas, to see more of the commonality than differences. And as Boisak is around the corner, Boisak is also coincide with the Thai New Year's and the Burmese New Year. Yeah. And we also eat the same dishes during Boisak and during Songkran, which is the fermented rice, or the rice soaked in waters, and and living with different condiments. So as you can see, we are more connected than we thought that we were, and also dishes like those appam hoppers or idiyappams has also traveled across the Bay of Bengal and evolved into different dishes to suit different taste and different sentimentalities. So as I would like to reiterate myself, we are more connected than we thought we were. Food can also be a platform for conflict resolutions. A good friend of mine who owns a restaurant in London, Yotam Ottoklenki, he is Israeli of Jewish origins. He teamed up with his countrymen, another chef called Sami Tamimi, who is Israeli of Arabs origins. So they started a conversations, and they have found out that even though there is this conflict in Palestine, in Jerusalem, in fact whether you are a Muslim or whether you are a Jewish, you share more common in food than your ideological differences. It's the same thing. If we are taking of if we are talking about the Bay of Bengal, we can think of the Bay of Bengal as a great melting pot, as the greatest connections between the waters and also between the Himalaya hill tracts that has brought the livelihood and the trades for centuries, and the prosperities for these regions. So my suggestion would be that instead of looking for the grander things to connect us together, we should go back to a small, mundane way of life that connect all of us together and starting conversations and helping us to reimagining our future together. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. It's an experience after a good lunch to see good pictures of food. Right, sir. So you talked about grassroots diplomacy, you talked about transmigration, you talked about we should remap on our understanding of this region's habit, that is food habit. So with your deliberation, I think a new area where cultural exchanges and civilization links can be studied. With these words, I greet Mr. Lomzong Dorji, graduated with Bachelor of Arts from the Royal University of Bhutan. He is a senior lecturer in the Said University. He received his MA in South Asian Studies from UNESCO, Madanjit Singh Institute of South Asian Regional Cooperation at Pondicherry Central University, India. The Vice Chancellor is happy. He has also completed postgraduate diploma in human rights and postgraduate diploma in rural development from Pondicherry Central University in India. So that's the link. He is enrolled in doctoral degree program at Institute of Asian and Transnational Studies at Vilnius University under the Development Cooperation Project, which is entitled Support to Bhutan in the Field of Ethnology Doctoral Degree by the Embassy of Lithuania in New Delhi, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Lithuania. He has also worked as lecturer in the university. He studied his bachelor's degree. He is a project officer to Bhutan Association of Women Entrepreneurs, researcher to Bhutan Tourism Corporation Limited, and reporter to Bhutan Times. At present, he is working as senior lecturer teaching BA in Political Science and Sociology program at Royal University of Bhutan. My regards to Dr. Dorji, and I request him to start his deliberation.
Assalamu alaikum, Vanakam, Ayubuan, Sawadekap, Mangala Bakinba, Namaste, Namaskar, and Kuzo Zangula. Greetings from Nurbuling Richter College, Royal University of Bhutan. Very good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, Bhutan is often referred in some of the travel magazine, in travel writing as last Shangri-La, which means untouched by the outside world. Sometimes Bhutan is also been referred as a small country, sandwiched between two giants, China in the north and India in the south. Other time, Bhutan is also been framed to the outside world as Bhutan as one of the happiest country, where happiness is given more importance than the gross national product of a state. But let me set up the context to the theme of cultural exchange and civilization linkages in relation to my topic, Bhutan as element of interactions and exchanges, in particular to prehistoric times in Eastern Himalaya. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware of Silk routes, and we know that Silk routes were an interconnected web of route linking between the ancient society of East, South, Central, West Asia, and the Mediterranean. And it has contributed a lot in developing a world's great civilizations, and it has also enabled exchange of ideas that reshape the known world today. Bhutan was no exception. Writers like Chakrabarti, Bode, Salka, Ray, and Pinso assess that Bhutan was a part of a very important network system between Tibet, India, and China. She played a significant part in long-distance networks, most notably in the movement of tea, salt, but also species like wool, musk, silk, pearls, metals, and many other commodities. However, we have a problem. In context to prehistoric period in Bhutan, we do not know anything before 8th century. The writing culture of Bhutan started somewhere with the advent of Buddhism in 8th century. Before and in the history of Bhutan is hypothetically constructed based on diffusion of Buddhism, based on advent of Buddhism. So ancient period of Bhutan starts from 8th century, but we do not know anything before 8th century, the prehistoric period. Although some of our neighbors has constructed and contributed in the science of archaeology and anthropology, most of the linguistic anthropologists, archaeologists has proved several evidences that we share the same linkages. We had a same root. However, in context of Bhutan, although we have some stone ages, we have some megaliths, but those megaliths are also been invested based on Buddhism. Before advent of Buddhism, there must have been the shamanistic or Buddhism cult prevailed in the entire district of Bhutan. But as I told you earlier, there was also advent of Buddhism that constructed the social composition in Bhutan with the advent of Buddhism. But at the same time, I was really curious to know when did agriculture started. Although we say that in Bhutan, agriculture is the backbone of our economy, but we do not know the origin of agriculture. We do not know domestication of plants, and we do not know animal breeding. It would have been some area of influence in eastern Himalaya, but we do not know anything about it. There are some literature put forwarded by some of the archaeologists, not linguistic anthropologists, that too does not give scientific evidences. So therefore, I have referred to some of the archaeological excavation findings in some findings, and it happens to be Michael Harris that he examined some of the lithic tools, stone ages, in British Museum, and the findings of that ages came out to be 2250 BC, which is evident that there was a Neolithic culture. And then we know that Neolithic civilization is the beginning of agriculture from 1500 BC. But we do not know anything, as I told you earlier, because of deep ecology, and maybe some other calamities must have happened, or it is underneath the earth's surface. We do not know anything. Similar ages are also found at the courses of eastern Himalaya. It's also evident that Myanmar also has the same stone ages. Thailand, India, China, Tibet, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, they also have a similar evidences, but to construct the reality is based on local cosmology. We believe in element of nature, and in our derivatives, the Bhutan's derivatives are based on Buddhism. We construct everything and we invest everything based on Buddhism. But what I would like to propose here to the gathering, that we don't have a data sharing or inventories of Paleolithic period or Neolithic period. So which is also very important, the sources. For instance, in every rituals, in every festival in Bhutan, every festival has to do something with food grains, and then we call it Drunagu, 9 food grains. Liu et al. Conducted a study on barley, foxtail millet, and then the gene of foxtail millet, which was discovered in northeastern part of Bhutan at Khenggungdo in the most remotest part of the country. And then when they examined the foxtail millet, it came out to be the same species near Velu River, the Chinese civilization. And then the foxtail millet of Bhutan is much more older than the foxtail millet, although they come from same family. So which further proves and evidences to the masses, to the world, that there was food globalization from Bhutan to China. So there are so many food grains that where we can conduct a joint and collaborative research so that new insight, new findings can shed a light on the scientific research. Today, we construct reality based on our local cosmology, based on our identity politics. So that creates hindrance. That is obstacle. But we cannot do away with this. And then it is a reality that we live in ethnocentric world. Although we say in much of the gathering to rhetoric talk that we carry the sense of relativism. But in reality, it is not. It is only through the scientific research that can shed light. Chinese had own share of civilization. Chinese civilization, we have Mesopotamia, Egyptian, Maya civilization, Indus Valley civilization. So as a scholar, I felt that there should be something, because Bhutan was a part of network during the ancient period. We know the timeline, the chronology from ancient period, but we do not know anything before the ancient period. It is a mystery. Now, it is very important for Bhutanese to construct history in relation to prehistory. What was like before? The lifestyle, the domestication of animal. When did it start? Is it the same cow, the yak that we raised? Are they from Bhutan, or it was migrated? So that we can develop some of the linkages. So through a vernacular perception is also important, ethnography study is also important, as well as biochemistry, geology, our area of research that we need to put into effort, so that we can draw new findings in studying the eastern Himalayan region, which can also stretch up to Thailand and Myanmar. Therefore, thus, I immensely feel the importance of archaeological sciences. Through archaeological sciences, this is my own perspective, that it can also unearth some of the mystery that we were thinking of it. As I've told you earlier, we construct our social reality based on identity, based on centric views. But if we refer to our ancient past, there was a rich civilization where each man and woman, our ancestors played very important role, sharing traditional knowledge to the present generation. But today we are divided by a boundary. We are divided by identity politics. We are divided by race, color, creed. So therefore, it is my humble submission coming from a very small country, a tiny country, the smallest GDP in the region of South Asia, with the humble submission that can we share the data of Neolithic and Paleolithic period and digitize and archive them and see how we were linked, starting from crops to animal breeding, so that we can at least trace the origin of the scientific point of influences. Thank you, one and all. Thank you, La.
Thank you, Dr. Dawoodji, for your learned deliberation. You have touched Bhutan's elements of interaction and exchange during the prehistoric times in Eastern Himalayas. You have touched the role of Buddhism. And when you were speaking on Buddhism, I am remembered of the great speech of Swami Vivekananda. The title of the speech is Buddhism, the Fulfillment of Hinduism, where Vivekananda writes that Shakyamuni was born a Hindu, Shakyamuni died a Hindu. Buddhism is the logical development, the logical fulfillment of the religion of the Hindus. So, in its longest paper, which is known as the paper on Hinduism, Vivekananda says, from the high heights of the Vedanta philosophy to the low ideas of idolatry, with its multifarious mythology, monism, qualified monism, dualism, agnosticism of the Buddhists, atheism, each and all has a place in Hindus' religion. So it's practically, when you try to find out ancient links in this region, the Hindu link can neither be ignored and can neither be omitted. So with these words, I greet Professor Dr. Rupendra Kumar Chattopadhyay, Azad Fellow, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad Institute of Asian Studies, Kolkata. Professor Chattopadhyay was formerly Vivekananda Chair Professor of Social Science, University of Calcutta, former Paresh Chandra Chatterjee Professor of History at Presidency University, Kolkata, and former Professor and Head Department of Archaeology, University of Calcutta. He has, over the years, extensively contributed to exploring ancient India, particularly in the field of archaeological orientations. His most notable books include The Archaeology of Coastal Bengal, published by Oxford University in the year of 2018. He also carried out many archaeological field excavations during his headship from 2003 to 2013 at the University of Calcutta. During his tenure as head, Professor Chattopadhyay worked as excavation director at the sites of Dihar, Pakhanna, and Mongolkot. With these words, I greet Professor Chattopadhyay to deliver his deliberation, and your time starts.
Respected Chairperson, Dr. Sharu Prasad Ghosh, respected dignitaries in the dais, respected dignitaries in the hall, my fellow researchers, ladies and gentlemen. I am extremely grateful to Arindam Mukherjee, the director, ISCS, for giving me the opportunity to speak before you or share few of my thoughts related to the cultural exchange and civilizational linkage. So if you go through my PowerPoint, then you'll get some idea how the cultural and civilizational mellows that interacted in and around the ancient world that include the major part of Eurasia West Asia, Central Asia, Himalayan, Sub-Himalayan tract, and the entire terrain of the East Coast, that is Southeast Asia. So I have also tried to give some of the major points related to the civilizational diversity of settlements, and interactive networks, including the mechanism that variegated society share dialogue through the ages. And my another point of interest is how religion also played an important role to give the shape of our identity and the context of interactive network. So this is the physical maps of the entire world that give us some knowledge about the physiographical character of India and its surrounding. So now the another features is the ancient migrations and trading routes along the important centers. That is also a major point of interest. So how the interactive that has been taken place. And here you will get some idea about the diversity of prehistoric population from one area to other. So how one could view the evolution of genetic evolution of mankind, so that the arrival of Australopithecus in Africa, then Pithecanthropus in Java, and so as Sinanthropus in Peking or China. So the and other diverse component related to the population structure around the old world. So how the story of Neanderthal penetration in Zagros Mountain, and then West Asian continent, West Asia to Central Asia to South Asia to Himalayan, Sub-Himalayan tract, and then Southeast Asia. So that this is the larger framework one can go through, and the bearing with our connective routes. So this is the connection I have tried to give a look on India and Southeast Asian connection. So along the Bay of Bengal or the East Coast, that is both Bongo Upasagara as well as Coromandel, and so as the peninsular India, and then Sri Lanka and other areas of Southeast Asia. So this is the map of Buddhism and its spread in and around, so that one can go, tie up the entire facet of Central Asia, that is Bactria, Afghanistan, Gandhar, Pakistan, so as northwestern or the northern part of India, Nepal, Tibet, Burma, and Nepal, Tibet, and then the Sikkim, Bhutan, northwestern frontiers, and so as Myanmar or by Burma, Vietnam, Cambodia, and other parts of Southeast Asia. So this is the active centers of Asian Buddhist world that I have tried to display in the map. Because of the shortage of time, I am not explaining the entire thing. I am extremely sorry. And now the Bangladesh, how Bangladesh could be played an important role to negotiate the entire world. So the antiquity of Bangladesh, so that the prehistoric antiquity of Bangladesh, the presence of Paleolithic man, Neolithic, Mesolithic man, Neolithic man, and then early history and historical facets of Bangladesh, how one could view the development of Bangladesh and its bearing with the Indian territory, and so as Southeast Asia. So I have also tried to give a look on the philosopher, the Buddhist scholars that spent their lifetime in Bangladesh. That is, for instance, Otish Dipankar and others, how Mainamati area that played a very crucial role for the expansion of Buddhist monastic association, and so as the other parts of Bangladesh related to the different dimension of our cultural so as the religious life. So here is the map of Bangladesh that also giving a specific distribution of secular and religious side and its connection with its surrounding, that is India and Southeast Asia. So these are the archaeological sites in Bangladesh, overcrowded in different aspects, so as how the society evolved in and around Bangladesh. So here one can get some idea about Mainamati and the findings in and around Mainamati. So this is the artifact discovered in Bangladesh related to the prehistoric culture. This is a very important evidence related to the beginning of early historic settlement and its bearing with Mauryan hegemony. So that Mahastan god and how the Mahastan god included in the political development of Indian subcontinent. So this is the structural findings and other evidence discovered at Mahastan god. Particularly, it was French project, excavation project, under the leadership of Celeste that excavated in the distant times. Wadi Bateshwar is another important site related to the negotiation with the coastal world, so that Meghna Delta and its connection with Bay of Bengal or Bangopsagar, not only in terms of trade route, but also the other facets of our socio-cultural life. So here is the antiquity that I have tried to project to give a look on how the bead manufacturing centers is well connected with Bangladesh centers, how the entire lapidary work that developed in and around Wadi Bateshwar and conceive the different dimension of our relationship, that is the relationship between producer and the consumer, the producer of bead manufacturing centers, and so as the presence of raw materials of bead making, precious and semi-precious stone, and metal objects and others. So these are the another the agate, Carlinian beads, chalcedony and other. So this is the structural evidence and pottery discovered from Wadi Bateshwar in the presence of coins. Now, this is the Buddhist site, Shampur Mahavihara, that is Paharpur. Then the other detail of Mahavihara, this is also the structural evidence of here, and this is the Mainamati and Salvan Mahavihara. So these are the antiquity recorded from, Buddhist antiquity recorded from the site. So seals and sealings and other antiquity related to Buddhism reported from Mainamati, the Buddhist stupas over here. So the structural evidence. And this is the only slide that carries the relationship between the temple building activities or Nagaras, Besharas, Dravidas, or the North Indian temple building activities, and well connected with the Bengal, other parts of West Bengal. One can get some idea about the terracotta building activities, that is Ratno and other terracotta types of temple. Now, Sri Lanka is also equally shared the cultural contour and through the projection of religion and secular. So, Cholo and its connection with Sri Lanka and other South Indian dynasties like till the development of Shatavahana, pre-Shatavahana, Shatavahana and post-Shatavahana, Pallava, Cholo and others well connected with the world of Sri Lanka. Anuradhapur is one of the recently excavated site that also give us enormous knowledge about the rise and growth of Buddhism in Sri Lanka. Thailand is equally important so far as the Buddhist antiquities is concerned, and how Dharavati and other areas played a crucial role for the reciprocation of the Buddhist world that not only include Himalayan, Sub-Saharan, Central Asia, Khotanian area, so that is a bigger horizon of Buddhist world. So these are the Buddhist antiquity reported from Thailand. These are the antiquities. Now, Myanmar. Myanmar is a very important place, not only in terms of the growth of Buddhism and others, is well connected with the other parts of India, that is Patkai range and Arakan Yoma, how this developed, how since the prehistoric times, how this part of territory provided a well-connecting routes between the Southeast Asia as well as Indian subcontinent. So Irrawaddy valleys to Delta and other areas also contributed much. These are the antiquity reported from Myanmar. So I'm not describing because of short of time. Now Nepal. Nepal is also the place contributed equally towards the development of Buddhism, Brahmanism, and so on. In my paper, I have tried to display how the Shaivacharya's business that also included the Pashupati temples of Nepal and other areas. So these are the Buddhist antiquities. Now Bhutan. Bhutan is really important, as you know, and earlier scholars, they repeatedly talked about the contribution of Bhutan in this direction. Tibet also played an important role towards the amalgamation of different cultures, synchronization of the Buddhist world. So these are the antiquity reported from Tibet, the Tibetan monastery site. So the concept of Indosphere is another, so that concept of Greater India, how it could be. And as you know, that is, if you go through the Greater India development and the contribution of R.C. Majumdar, Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, P.C. Bakshi, Phanindranath Bose, and Kalidas Nag in this direction. I am not extending all these theoretical issues related to the concept of Greater India here. So how it expanded and the centralized kingdom that emerged in Java, Sumatra, Cambodia, Burma, and other parts of, including the Vietnam, etc. And how the Ramayana, Mahabharata, and other also give another dimension of a culture. So these are the antiquities reported from. My concluding remark is how the Bay of Bengal interactive sphere is an important issue to visualize our Indic world, and how the concept of Greater India and colonization and the nationalist historians' contributions towards this direction, how Himalayan and Sub-Himalayan tract that well connected with the development of Bay of Bengal, and so as the contribution of Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism in this world. So the other point that highlighted the Indian freedom movement, the role of INA and the leadership of Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose in the scene, and how Rabindranath Tagore and others also give a look on the different dimension of our EA. So the organization of IMSET and its Silver Jubilee commemorative strengthening the neighborhood association through multiple venues and ongoing discussion of these economically and frontier territories of Southeast Asia have a long civilized link, and etc. So that I'm extremely sorry for my hurried so related to. I'm extremely sorry. And again, I must convey my gratitude to Arindam Mukherjee, the director of ISCS Theatre, and others related to the conference for giving me the opportunity to share some of my points. And I also convey my regard to Dr. Swarup Prasad Ghosh for his kind recommendation for the same. Namaskar.
Thank you, Professor Chattopadhyay, for your cooperation, and thanks to all my panelists. We have been able to conclude the last technical session in time. The post-lunch session, generally in seminar, ends much after the scheduled time, and we have concluded it in time. My question. 2 comments. Okay. I take these 2 comments before concluding because the valedictory session is supposed to start at 4 o'clock. We are already 8 minutes past 4. So I will take hurried 2 comments from Professor Chakraborty and conclude the session. Okay, please give him the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, sir. Since I have to leave, I thought I'd take your indulgence in snatching out 2 minutes from the busy schedule, just to make 2-3 comments quickly. One is, having attended the deliberations for the last 2 days with occasional miss of some sessions here and there, I get a feel that the penultimate session probably ultimately holds the key of connectivity of the historicities that you have been discussing for the last 2 days. And the kind of message that one could quickly pick up, as to my understanding, has been, we do not only preach, but we practice. We do not only suggest, we implement. We do not only conceive, we commit. So that should be the message. And the kind of wave that has emerged in the Bay of Bengal should now flow along to the Indian Ocean in order to connect right and left the Pacific and the Atlantic. And that holds the key for Indian civilization to reach to the outer world, which once the Asiatic society has done, and now it has become old like me, that has been 240 years, and in my case it is 81 years. Now it is for Arindam and this generation to hold the key and push it forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chakravorty, for your blessings. And this continent, Asia, is blessed that all the great practicing religions and the great preachers of all practicing religions were Asian by birth. Asia is a land of spirituality. As Sri Aurobindo told that there is a difference between the soul of Europe and the soul of Asia. So cultivating the spiritual connections between nations will bring us closer to each other. With these notes, thanks to all of you, thanks to Mr. Mukherjee, the director of ISCS, and thanks to all my speakers. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, panelists. May I please request an ISCS official to felicitate the chair with the memento? Requesting Dr. Ghosh to felicitate the speakers, please. With this, we come to the end of a very enriching technical session 5. Now we move on to our last and final session of the day and the conference, the valedictory session.